know the scene. I mean, we've all seen it 100 times, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That dimly lit command center. You've got the team all geared up in the back of a transport plane, the giant screen counting down.
3, 2, 1, execute.
Exactly. Everyone screams, the music swells, and, the fate of the free world is hanging on this one split-second decision. It's frantic, it's loud.
And it's great for selling popcorn. It creates this really persuasive narrative that special operations, these targeted strikes, are all high-octane, adrenaline-fueled moments.
Right, the ticking clock is always the main character.
Always.
But today, we're going to look at a source that basically tells us to take that Hollywood script and just throw it in the shredder.
Uh-huh.
We're doing a deep dive into a breakdown titled The List Episode 5. And honestly, the reality it describes is so much stranger than the fiction.
It really is. It's quieter, colder, and, it's bureaucratic in a way that's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, and what makes Episode 5 so fascinating is its focus. It's not interested in the political debate about who ends up on a target list or the spycraft of how the intel was gathered.
It just skips the why entirely.
And goes straight to the how. We're looking at the operational mechanics after the decision has been made. That moment when the choice becomes, and this is the source's phrase, irreversible.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really understand that quiet nature of these operations. We're going to explore how distance isn't just a safety measure, but a defining feature of the psychology of the strike itself.
And how success in this world isn't defined by a press conference, but by silence.
Exactly.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts. The source starts by just immediately dismantling that countdown myth I mentioned. It says, quite literally, there is no dramatic countdown.
Which is such a crucial distinction to make right up front. In our imagination, these strikes happen because of some imminent ticking clock threat. The villain is about to launch the missile, we have to stop him now. But the source explains that these operations often begin in total silence, sometimes hours or even days after the approval has been signed.
Days. So the green light is given, the president or whoever has signed the order, and then nothing happens.
Precisely. And that's because the timing relies on opportunity, not urgency.
And that's the key insight here.
It is. Think of it less like a frantic race and more like a hunting license. Yeah, the permit. Yeah, the weapon. But you haven't seen the deer yet.
So it's a waiting game.
It's a vigil. The operators aren't rushing to beat a clock. They're waiting for a very specific set of variables to align. Is the target actually there?
Is he alone?
Is the weather clear? Is the pattern of life consistent?
Pattern of life. That's a term that comes up in the source. Can we unpack that? Because it sounds incredibly mundane for something involving lethal force.
It is mundane. And that's the point. Pattern of life means watching a target do the most boring things imaginable.
Like what?
Does he buy bread at the same shop every Tuesday? Does he walk the dog at 6 a.m.? The operators are watching for routine. They are weaponizing boredom.
That feels almost more stressful than the action movie version.
Right.
I mean, if you're rushing, you're running on adrenaline. But if you're just watching a guy buy bread for 3 days straight...
You start to know him.
Yeah. Doesn't that make the eventual button push harder?
You would think so, but the source argues that the wait actually changes the psychological landscape. By the time the moment comes, it's not an emotional decision, it's just the final step in a data sequence.
The final check.
The final check. And the source makes a big point of this. And tell me if this phrasing stuck out to you. It emphasizes that this check is not a debate.
Yeah, that was very clear. It says it's strictly a confirmation. They aren't relitigating whether this guy deserves to be a target. That ship has sailed.
Exactly. The moral argument is over. Now, they are just verifying data points, location verified.
Pattern consistent. And civilians. That's the other big box to check.
Right. Presence of civilians assessed. But look at the language the source uses next. It doesn't say risk eliminated. It says risk recalculated.
Yeah, recalculated. That's clinical. It sounds like an actuary adjusting an insurance premium.
It is a very precise choice of words. It acknowledges that risk can never be zero in war. But at this stage, the risk isn't a feeling, it's a math problem.
Is the probability of collateral damage below the preset threshold?
That's it. If the threshold is, say, 10%, and the calculation comes in at 9%, you proceed. If it's 11%, you wait.
So if the number is right, the strike happens, it strips the hesitation right out of it.
It attempts to strip the emotion out of it. Which brings us to the concept that seems to be the backbone of this entire source. distance.
Distance. The source calls it a defining feature. And it's not just talking about miles, right? There's a psychological layer here.
Well, for sure, it distinguishes between physical distance and emotional distance, but argues they feed into each other. I mean, let's look at the physical setup first. We aren't talking about soldiers kicking down doors.
No. As the source describes, the operators are usually thousands of miles away. They're in the United States, or a secure base somewhere.
And think about the environment. They're in rooms. Dimly lit, yes, but air-conditioned. Ergonomic chairs. Coffee cups.
It sounds more like an air traffic control tower, or maybe a high-frequency trading floor than a battlefield.
That's a valid comparison. It's a workflow. But think about what that does to the human perspective. This is where we get into sensory deprivation, which the source highlights as critical.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you are on the ground, war is a full-body experience. It's loud, it smells, you feel the percussion of explosions in your chest.
And fear. You feel fear.
Right, but these operators, they're safe. They don't hear a scream, they don't smell the smoke, they don't feel the heat. They see heat signatures, they see movement, they see impact.
There's this line in the source that I had to read twice because it was so abstract, but then it hit me. It says, silence becomes data.
That is the aha moment for me in this text. Silence becomes data. It's profound. Think about what that means. When an operator sees a heat signature disappear or stop moving on a thermal camera, that isn't experienced as a tragedy or a triumph.
It isn't, I just killed a human being.
It's just...
The dots stopped moving.
Exactly. It's a data point confirming the action was successful. The lack of sensory feedback, the silence, turns a human life into a binary status. Active or inactive, 1 or 0.
It really emphasizes that emotional distance. If you turn people into pixels and heat signatures, it probably makes the job a lot more sustainable for the people doing it.
Which is likely the point of the design. It protects the operator from trauma. But we have to ask, this is implicit in the source, what does it do to the decision-making process when the consequences are viewed through a filter of silence?
Does it make the decision to strike easier?
Maybe. That leads us right into the event itself, the strike. We've done the waiting, we've recalculated the risk, the button is pushed. The source emphasizes brevity here.
Yes. No speeches, no final warnings.
It's just over. Seconds, sometimes less.
And then immediately the shift occurs. We move from anticipation to the immediate aftermath. And the source notes a really sharp change in language here.
The logs don't say enemy destroyed. The language becomes purely technical.
We've got terms like strike assessment, target status.
Secondary explosions noted, movement ceased.
Notice the absence of narrative. There's no story being told here.
Well, secondary explosions noted, that's a detail the source focused on. Why is that important?
Because it turns chaos into evidence. If you hit a house and there's a massive second fireball, that secondary explosion usually means you hit a weapons cache. It validates the intel.
But phrasing it that way noted keeps it sterile. It's an engineering observation.
And movement ceased. That's the one that gets me. It's such a clinical way of saying the target is dead.
It is. But if you started using emotional language, we got him, or the bastard is dead, you reintroduce that narrative drama we talked about avoiding.
Right.
By sticking to target status, inactive, you maintain that professional detached distance.
So, the strike happens, the report is filed, screen goes dark. Normally, this is where you send in a team to confirm, right? You check the body.
In a ground war, yes. But here, you usually can't touch the evidence. So the wait that follows the strike isn't about physical confirmation. It's about digital echoes.
The source calls this measuring success, the sound of nothing.
This is where the methodology gets really interesting. They measure effectiveness by listening to what doesn't happen.
Explain that. How do you measure a negative?
Well, imagine the target was a key commander in a network. Every day, he makes calls, sends emails, coordinates things. The operators have been monitoring that noise to find him. After the strike, they keep listening.
So if the phone rings,
if communication resumes on that network, questions arise. Maybe you missed. Or maybe the command structure is more resilient than you thought. Someone else just picked up the phone.
But if communication doesn't resume,
then the strike is effective. The silence confirms the kill.
That leads to what the source calls the paradox of retaliation. I think most of us, when we think of bombing someone, we expect them to fight back. We expect anger.
Right. A counterattack, a statement of defiance, something loud. But the source says the most common outcome, and the desired one, is nothing.
Nothing happening is treated as success. That is wild when you think about it. Usually in war, you want surrender or a flag on a hill. Here, you just want the line to go dead.
It frames success as structural, not emotional. They aren't looking for morale victory, they're looking for leadership gaps, disrupted planning, reduced communication traffic.
It's about breaking the plumbing of the enemy organization.
That's a good way to put it. It's plumbing. If you take out the guy who pays the salaries, you aren't trying to scare the enemy, you're just trying to make their logistics fail.
And if their logistics fail, they go quiet.
Exactly. The nothingness is the proof that the system is broken.
But doesn't that make it hard to tell if you're actually winning? I mean, silence is great, but does it mean the war is ending?
That is the million-dollar question. The source hints that this approach is less about winning in that World War II sense, and more about managing.
You're managing a threat level.
You're weeding a garden. You don't expect the weeds to surrender, you just keep pulling them out so the garden doesn't get overrun.
Weeding the garden. That implies it never ends. You have to keep doing it forever.
Which brings us to the cyclical nature of this. But before we get there, we have to talk about how this looks to us, the public. Or rather, how it doesn't look.
Right. Visibility. The source is pretty blunt about this. No images are released, no footage shown, no official acknowledgement.
This is public invisibility, and it's intentional. Why do you think that is?
Well, the obvious answer is secrecy. You don't want to give away your methods.
That's part of it. But think about the narrative again. If you release a photo of a crater or a body, you create an image that can be used. The enemy can use it as a rallying cry.
Or the public at home might get upset about the violence.
In a sense, yes, it denies closure. The source says the event ends operationally, but never narratively.
I found that idea really unsettling. Think about a traditional war or even a criminal trial. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end. A verdict is read, a treaty is signed.
And know it's over.
Yeah. Here, there's no trial, no confirmation of guilt presented to a jury. The target is gone, the file is closed, and that's it. It just disappears.
And because there is no narrative ending, no public the end card, it allows for what the source calls normalization.
The assembly line aspect, as soon as one operation is marked, movement ceased, the machinery resets for the next target.
The next name enters the system, the process repeats.
And this leads to a profound danger. Uniformity replaces reflection.
That's a heavy phrase.
It is. What does it look like in practice?
It means that if every operation looks exactly like the last, same room, same screen, same technical language, same silence, you stop asking, should we do this? And you only ask, can we do this?
The uniformity lulls everyone, from the operators to the policymakers, into a rhythm where reflection feels unnecessary.
It becomes just another bureaucratic function, like processing tax returns.
It becomes routine. Did we get the guy? Yep, movement ceased. Okay, who's next?
Precisely. And that brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this source material. The goal of this policy isn't visibility or shock and awe. It is disappearance.
The raid is successful when there are no headlines, when there are no consequences.
Just a quiet continuation.
It's almost like the perfect crime, isn't it? If nobody knows it happened and nothing changes in the wider world, did it even happen?
That's the philosophical question. But the practical answer, according to the source, is that this silence makes the policy sustainable.
Sustainable. That's a word usually for like green energy or agriculture.
In this context, it means politically sustainable. If these raids cause massive public outcry every time, or if they triggered massive retaliatory wars, the policy would collapse. It would be too costly in money, in lies, and political capital.
But because it's quiet, because it's distant, it can go on forever.
The silence buys longevity. It allows the war to move into the background of our lives like a humming refrigerator that you just stop hearing after a while.
That is, well, it's a lot to process. We started this deep dive thinking about action movies, and we've ended up in this very quiet, very sterile room where death is just a blip on a screen.
And success is the sound of nothing. It strips away the romance of special operations completely.
It leaves us with pure mechanics. So, to recap before we wrap up, we've covered the lack of countdowns, that hunting license approach.
Right. We've looked at the physical and emotional distance that turns silence into data.
And we've discussed the technical language that prevents a story from forming.
And we've seen how the entire system is designed to remove friction, emotional friction for the operator, political friction for the government, and narrative friction for the public.
It's a machine designed to run without noise.
And that brings us to a final thought I'd like the listener to consider, based on this concept of distance. We've talked about how the operators are protected by physical distance. And we've talked about how the public, that's you and me, are protected by information distance. We don't see the photos. We don't hear the stories.
Right, we don't have to confront the reality of what is happening in our names. We're insulated.
So here is the question. If the noise of war, the horror, the grief, the visual reality is totally removed from our experience, does that total removal of noise make endless warfare easier for us to accept?
Wow.
If we never have to hear it, do we ever feel the need to stop it? Or does the silence just make us comfortable with a war that never ends?
That is a heavy thought to leave us with, but I think it's the right one. The source forces us to look at the silence and ask what it's hiding. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Until then, thanks for listening.
Stay curious.